Well, hello. This is Dennis Sanders. I'm the pastor of First Christian Church of St. Paul, Disciples of Christ, which is located in Roseville, Minnesota. And if you haven't watched these videos before, welcome. Well, during Lent, these weekly check-in videos are going to be focused on what is the congregation's Lenten theme, which is unfinished, discovering God's call in the not yet. And today's video focuses on a call to values. And I wanted to start this off by talking about fan service. Now, fan service is a term that if you watch things like science fiction, television, or movies, or maybe comic book movies or things to that extent, fan service is usually when the creator does something that really is to kind of please the fans. And sometimes fan service can produce some really good works. Other times, not so much. And that's kind of the problem and the risk of fan service, is that you can focus so much on trying to please people, trying to get on people's good side, that you can sometimes end up not doing really good work. But I'm kind of learning that it's not really just in science fiction, watching, Star Trek or Star Wars, that you will see fan service. Unfortunately, we're seeing it in journalism, which of course is near and dear to my heart, having have a degree in journalism. I'm not a big fan of cable news these days, and it really doesn't matter whether it's Fox or MSNBC. I just don't really like these networks. And the reason is because they are so invested in telling people what they want to hear. People who are listening to Fox tend to think that Democrats are basically the most evil thing ever, and it's the opposite on MSNBC, where Republicans can't really do anything right. They're just incredibly corrupt and evil. Now, Fox News especially is in a bit of trouble these days, as many of you know. They are in the midst of a lawsuit with Dominion Voting Systems. This is a company that produces voting equipment. And Dominion is suing Fox, and there has been lots of revelations that have come out of this lawsuit. And one of the things that we are learning is that while the opinion journalists were out there kind of saying that Donald Trump had lost the election, that it had been stolen from him, they didn't really believe that. But they also did not only not believe that and kept saying and kept not telling the truth to its public, but they also in some ways were upset that there were journalists, news gathering journalists, that were basically saying and not following or towing, quote unquote, the company line. They were afraid. People, especially the opinion journalists and the people behind who are kind of in management, were really afraid of telling the truth because they were afraid of losing their viewers who really believed that this election had been stolen. Former House Speaker Paul Ryan wrote or contacted Rupert Murdoch, the owner of Fox News, and told him that the network had to stop spreading election lies. Ryan had added that many people believed the election was stolen, and this is his quote, because they got a diet of information telling them the election was stolen from what they believe were credible sources, unquote. Now, I know that it's very easy for us to look at this and say, well, that's just Fox. What did you expect? But they are not the only one that is guilty of this. As I said, I think that a lot of cable news is doing what they can to please the audience. Now, to the extent when it comes to Fox, they kind of went a bit farther than, let's say, MSNBC. But both networks try to play and do what is pleasing to their audience. All of this brings up some questions of what are our values and what matters most? And are we willing to hold on to those values, even at our own personal cost? Now, in Matthew 4, Jesus is sent out into the desert, and he is there for 40 days and 40 nights. And after those 40 days, the devil shows up, and he tempts him 3 times. Now, the first 2 times that he is tempted, he is basically offered things that in some ways make sense. You're hungry, Satan says, right? So, if it's in your power to do this, why hold back? Make some bread. Feed yourself. Over and over again, Jesus tells Satan that he won't give in. And when the devil tries to give these little things like turning stones into bread, Jesus says, no, I am more than just my wants. When the devil says, throw himself off of a tall tower because the angels will care for him, Jesus says, no, I'm not going to put God to the test. And then finally, the devil shows him all the kingdoms of the world. And he says, this is all going to be yours. You can rule over all of this if you just follow me. Well, Jesus finally tells Satan to beat it. Jesus tells Satan, there's only one God, and the devil ain't it. What are our values? Fox and MSNBC might want to people please, but that doesn't mean that we don't do that either. Do we want to please others at the expense of our values? I know that they're about you, but there have been times that I sometimes refrain from saying the right thing because I don't want to upset people, or I want people to like me. Lent is a time for us to think about values. Think about where we have fallen short. And thankfully, it is also a time when we can seek forgiveness from a God that is all about grace and about starting over. The life that we live is one where we are always facing tests just like Jesus out in the desert. And those tests are always kind of saying, do we trust in God? Do we believe in the values that we say we profess? Or do we have values that really run counter to Jesus? We just don't make those known. And do we believe as we live through life that the Holy Spirit is there guiding us through those challenges, guiding us in those times when we may want to say the easy thing and not the hard thing? Fox News, in this case, failed its test. They wanted to do fan service instead of actual journalism. But what about you and me? How are we doing fan service instead of being called to our values? I pray, dear friends, that God will help us as we face our testing, which is basically everyday life, and that we won't do fan service, but seek to be disciples of Jesus, the one who, like us, was tempted, and the one who is with us always. Take care, Godspeed, and I'll see you soon.